And that's what we want to talk about here on Africa Speaks: climate change, the effects of climate change, and of course forest cover and how all those correlate. And joining me for that particular discussion is Dr. Vincent Oyeba, who is the Principal Research Scientist and National Coordinator Climate Change Research Program at KEFRI. Good afternoon and thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon, Masuri. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Karibu sana. So let's start with Somalia. Those are effects of climate change, and East Africa in general for the past few months have been really, actually years, affected by the climate change and the effects. From where you sit, do you think enough is being done to combat climate change?
Yeah, thanks a lot again for that opportunity to reflect on this very important segment on the impact of climate change, not only in Africa, but globally.
Yes.
But look at what you already shared in Somalia and other countries. Indeed, I can mention that countries are making very significant progress to ensure that the impacts of climate change in different sectors are actually addressed, be it the transport sector, be it the health sector, forest sector, agricultural sector. And this is coming in line with the global agreements that we have held in terms of negotiations. Ideally, in the coming of the Paris Agreement, most countries have made what you call nationally determined contributions.
Yes.
In a way that they can look at the mitigation efforts, adaptation efforts, so as they can actually address sectorial impact of the climate change. Because to have come to the aspect where countries could make that progress, it is based on the vulnerability levels that these sectors are exposed to. For example, in the case you mentioned about the floods, it means in most of the urban areas, we have poor infrastructural management. Obviously, we expect that areas to be heavily flooded. And with that kind of a circumstance, it will make us that the population, the cities, become extremely vulnerable.
Yeah.
If you look at the community, for example, in rural areas, like in Kenya, Kano Plains, we've been seeing all this is coming in. So it means, again, that must map out, say, where are the vulnerability exist? What's the level of exposure that is there? In the view of that, therefore, through our national government contribution, various efforts are being laid down. However, one of the main constraints that will basically lead to these efforts will be evidently present is financing.
Yeah.
If you look at most of the national government contributions being designed are conditional with support, because the impacts of climate change, you look at the contribution of Africa in general terms to the global greenhouse gas emissions, which basically brings in a big element of temperature rise for recent precipitation, is very negligible. We are saying about 3%, but the rest come from the other side. So when we peg, therefore, our sectoral efforts to combat the impacts of climate change, we must have the finance available. And this is why I say Africa, Kenya, and other countries really find challenges. We have very nice strategies, we have very nice policies, but how are they moving towards implementation? Finance becomes a big problem.
Okay.
So in the view of that, I can say that we have clear blueprints on where I want to go, but the financing mechanism becomes a critical entity that can be able to really help us to really address some of those challenges there.
And it's, you continue.
Like for example, what the picture I've shown there, these floods happening. How is the evacuation program PMED? You see, clear. We expect the meteorological department can signal that we want to have this level amount of rainfall. We may be El Nino, La Nina kind of stuff there. It means we have the information and the other warning system are provided. But how, therefore, are we preparing our communities to be actually responsive to that situation there? It becomes a challenge. If I may bring in home that based on this kind of issue provided, there are various financing mechanisms that have been come on board, which actually will help Africa to really address adaptation issues.
Can we know some of them?
Exactly. For example, the adaptation fund is one of the financing mechanisms that is being provided in this case there. We have the Green Climate Fund. So I just want to bring in context of what you have raised here in the view of the flood and conclude that adaptation fund takes into account some of these issues there. You map out areas vulnerable and really design some of the mechanisms under which that the community can be able to respond effectively to the floods. For example, Kenya, we are among the few countries in the continent that actually have what's called national implementing entity of adaptation fund, which is run by a National Environmental Management Authority. We're able to get a grant about 1 billion in this case, 1 billion Kenya shillings. And we're able, for example, construct some of the evacuation centers, for example, happening in Nyando Plains there. We had some other areas concerned. So it means if we have proper financing, we're able to tell, for example, during the long rains, floods will occur. So where would they move to? those are some of the best efforts I mentioned that are moving in there. Now, we're just coming to the perspective of where we have mentioned about the correlation between trees, forest, in this case there. Truly, trees are playing a very important role.
Okay, but before we even get to trees, let's go one step at a time.
Great.
You've talked about the issue of financing and equally community preparedness. I'll start with financing, because since the Paris Agreement, targets have been made, but those countries never meet the target that they have in terms of providing financial support. Do you think there is enough goodwill from them?
The answer can be yes and no, because any financing flow has some conditions. You have to fulfill them. I mean, there's no free money you want to pick and use it for your interventions. There are clear modalities provided. They make this big announcement. But how you access the resources is determined very well the capacities the African countries have. A good example, when we did the Adaptation Fund program in this country, it was announced, yes, you have this allocation of these resources. But how you access them, you have developed this program proposal, it must pass all through various procedures. Still, they are satisfied that these resources really will be utilized for intended purpose, for intended objective. So what I see in most cases is awareness that many people do not have how to access the resources, in this case there, are built to develop proposals, programs that will be able to attract this funding and so be able to benefit the communities. So I see that being a bit of a challenge. But generally speaking, we can see that the global community and the commitments that what they call developed countries do make, they can be able to do there, but they come with conditions. And those are the conditions that the African countries that we need to really work along and see how best can we tap them. How best, for example, can we bring the private financing on board? How best can we also encourage big philanthropists to really come on board and ensure that we are addressing this climate change in many dimensions?
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're lucky because President Ruto is one of those in the forefront fighting for climate change and, mitigation measures. So we have seen him, talk about planting trees and the need to plant more trees. Before we even talk about that, where are we in terms of forest cover?
Yeah, thanks a lot. If we talk in the Kenyan context, I think you made a very significant progress. Based on the statistics we released in 2022, forest cover now we speak about 8.83%. The tree cover is about 12.13%, which means that actually the tree cover is the first assessment we did in this country, and it gives us a very good baseline. And that's which is giving our head of state a very good momentum to actually push from 12.13% to 30%, at least 30% by 2032. So which means that a clear systematic approach needs to be in place so as can be able to achieve the 30% tree cover. So what I want to make clear, Masul, is that there's a clear difference between tree cover and forest cover.
Okay. So
what now we are focusing more into, which will automatically lead into improvement of our forest cover, is the tree cover. And why are we coming to that very particular space in each case there? It is because in 2016, this country of ours did actual assessment, and we established that we have big potential areas, be it the cropland, forest land, wetlands, or grasslands, rangelands. They have a big potential of actual tree planting. And we established a total area of about 8.8 million hectares that has a potential of being rehabilitated, to be restored, so it can be able to provide the expected goods and services to the people who depend on them. And in this case, therefore, this country did make a commitment under the United Nations to combat certification. And in this case, we said, based on Africa what's called Africa Restoration Landscapes, targeting 100 million, Kenya made a commitment 5.1 million by 2030. But our head of state has actually accelerated that one from 5.1 to 10.6 million. That's
actually double.
Yes, double that case there. So that means it has been doubled to us who can be able to really address these challenges of climate change, address of green environment, all those things there. So in that context there, we can say that having mapped all those areas, this government of ours has actually basically moved on to develop a very robust and really, what I can call it, very ambitious strategy that it can move towards reach that 30% target. And therefore say how much cropland we take, how much forest land can take, how much range they can take, and how much, for example, weather they can take. So all, even around the roadsides, in this case there. So all that summed up, we'll be able to give us, we require about 15-point-something billion trees to be planted by 2032, so as we believe at least attain a tree cover of at least 30%. So that tells you why we have big interest in the case of tree cover vis-a-vis the forest cover, because there are areas that not considered as forest, they are clubland, and therefore they have to plant trees. Their roadsides are not forest. So those are now efforts we are making that can be able to really realize this big ambition that the state is trying to push in this country.
And I get what you're saying, but also let's not forget, as you've mentioned, it is a very ambitious strategy.
Absolutely.
This strategy can only be implemented and impactful if it takes all of us.
Absolutely.
Not just the government, not just the implementers, but you and I as well. What, as you said, we need more of a systematic approach. How do we ensure that this fight towards climate change is actually comprehensive, that it involves everyone, and we equally have the understanding that we need? Not just you and I who know about it, but even every other Kenyan.
It's true. Actually, when look at all this effort I'm making there, it's not a one-man show or a one-woman show or a one-institution show. It's actually in the what called inclusive efforts for all the parties involved. One, we should be strong to create more awareness. For example, many people do not understand the climate change. When we look at issues we've been able to address in many areas and many fora, rarely we see people understanding the meaning of climate change in this case there. Rarely we seeing people establishing the nexus between tree growing and the climate change mitigation and adaptation. I mean, these are the issues that are quite like metaphors. So in view of that, I think the government of Kenya and the private sector, they are really coming at the forefront to create more awareness. For example, the institution I'm working with, the Kenya Infrastructure Institute, we have established a program of climate change research program, and the beauty of it is to ensure that it also creates more awareness in this case there. And they are trying to conduct more research so as we can, for example, demonstrate a correlation between tree growing and climate change mitigation. And that has it come on board. It is because trees, as they grow, they take in carbon dioxide. And the carbon dioxide is one of the main greenhouse gas emissions. That's a long-term sustained atmosphere. And therefore, it has a huge contribution to global warming. And therefore, because now naturally trees take in carbon dioxide to make food, it comes a natural sink of the carbon. And therefore, that's in a simple way tells that the more trees you grow, the more CO2 they're able to remove from the atmosphere, and therefore they're able to stabilize the climate system. Meaning that we live in a better society. If we're able to mitigate that, it means temperature will be reducing, precipitation will be normalized, and therefore we develop a very good adaptation mechanisms that can be go along this case there. So in that kind of a nexus, you can now see trees are very important in this case. In fact, in technical jargon, they call it the carbon sequestration. They remove the CO2 from the atmosphere. So that gives a clarity. And that's why, for example, the head of state, when he's saying that there is a clear relationship between tree growing and the climate change mitigation, it is in that context. They have the ability. And therefore, what is being done, as you have said, there are various incentive mechanisms that are being put at the local level and the global level that can be able actually to really address these issues very, very systematically in this case. For example, in negotiation we do, we have established what we call the carbon market mechanisms, which basically is an incentive. When you grow trees, you are able to be incentivized. And that means the community at the local level will get directly involved because there's value of growing the tree. Therefore, it is valued how much carbon does the tree that you are growing remove, and therefore I reward you. That means that tree has ability to stay as long as I am incentivizing you in that process there. So I'm giving you income and it gets in there. So through that, you can see the private sector coming on board because they are also engaging in investment. And that's why we need to see that it's not about the government alone that can even drive this process.
It's a multi-sectoral
engagement. Media have a very important role. You have to really bring out these issues. By fact, applaud me in this studio. You are basically telling the part of the world that indeed you have a role to communicate. I am sure there are many millions of your followers in this studio. So if they are listening to what's discussing here now, they can be able to pick and say, yes, KTN, you are doing this kind of job, and therefore you are the voice of the voiceless in other areas there. Then it's also attract the policymakers. and international community to see the necessity as to why that reaching the goal of, for example, 15 billion require all of us in one or the other. And for example, I may speak on the context within KEFRI.
Yes, briefly.
KEFRI, as a such institution, we have taken this work very seriously because we are a government entity in this case. And through commitment of health is that we are actually supplying high quality tree champlanting, because no one say you're planting another tree. It must have value to this person who want to plant it and got the ecosystem. So in this case, therefore, we are distributing of various seeds across the country. Schools are involved. In this case, churches are involved.
Yeah.
That's what's called religious-based organizations are involved. Those who are investing are involved. So it means by bringing all this to access this particular resource by having seed centers across the ecosystem, we are principally saying that indeed we are helping the government of the day to reach that bigger target that we are looking at.
Yeah.
And that's the bigger picture also, that indeed we can see many stakeholders coming on board. And the most importantly, the young people,
Yes.
the youth.
Because they are the future.
They're the army.
Yes.
They're the army of all the things there. So how do we need to really make them see the value of this case there?
I think they are slowly. Yes.
And that's what I'm saying, that I'm trying to really expand your point that what is the involvement coming in?
Yeah.
And that's why I say the youth are coming in, vulnerable people are coming in. And through those kind of incentives, I'm sure that we're going to make a big difference. As an institution which I'm working in, we also partner, for example, with many institutions across the world.
Yes.
For example, when you call me in the studio, I was with the partners from the University of Central Lancashire in the UK. We are doing a common project. And this project is basically incentivize the communities. We're taking the young people, the old women, to see how can they live between the fossil resources and their livelihood options. What do we give them? So fruit trees comes in. It's part of the tree, in this case there.
Yeah.
Avocados, citrus, mangoes comes there. And when you see these direct benefits from it there, it tells you that indeed there is a willingness to move towards
So it's just a smarter way of ensuring that they actually participate.
Yes.
Which is really smart.
Yes,
But of course, Dr. Ari, thank you so much. We're out of time, but thank you so much for that conversation. And hopefully it's not the last. It's the first of many. We'll continue having this discussion in order to play our role in ensuring that there is awareness in terms of climate change. Thank you so much, Dr. Vincent Oyeba, who is the Principal Research Scientist and National Coordinator Climate Change Research Program at KEFRI. Well, we take a short break. I leave you with Destination Africa.